Hey, everybody. Yeah, I don't know what. It's classic. Yeah, my intro thing decided to drop out with the music, but then come back right at the last minute. But anyway, cool. Yeah, so today we're looking at the last part of this Mark story, dealing with the demoniac, as they call him, so Legion in Mark 5. And I am going to I'm going to share the screen here and read this text. Let's see here. I'll put myself way down in the corner there and get rid of this. All right. So they came to the other side of the lake, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain. For he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces. And no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he always was howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now, there on the hillside, a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine. And the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned in the lake. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had had the legion, and they were afraid. Those who had seen what had happened to the demoniac and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by the demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. Yeah, so we talked about the last part of this story, the first part of the story last week, looking at the demon-possessed man and all of the kind of military overtones that were present in the text. And then we just talked about Jesus sending that occupying force out of the land and thereby liberating this man who was possessed by these demons. And now we come to this interesting place of what happens in the face of this liberation happening. This man is liberated from this possession, this oppression that had kept him chained, living in a place of death, kind of surrounded by death, howling and hurting himself, and all of these things, isolated from the community, over and over again, all of these things. And what's the reaction of the rest of the community? And it's interesting because it says that they were afraid, right? They were afraid. The liberation that happens, the total change in the kind of the status quo for this man, and then of course for their occupation as these swineherds, is overturned, and they're filled with fear. And just as Jesus had drove the demons out of the land, the people seek to drive Jesus out of the land. So it's this kind of ironic turn that happens there as the townspeople face this new situation. All right, cool. I see that Mark is. Get him in and see if his sound will work this time. That was
Hello.
Hey, Mark. All right.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Great.
Good.
Is there any echo on your end?
I don't hear echo.
Okay, good.
You hear echo? Okay, all right.
No, I just want to make sure that sometimes, sometimes it puts in it. I'll tell you what.
I don't hear you anymore. Oh.
Okay, here we go. How about that?
Okay. Yep. There you go.
Yeah. Sorry, I wanted to just put it in my ears so that just
okay. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So so I was just kind of reading the text and jumping in, and I don't have you got myself centered here.
let's let me turn that. There we go. There we go. All right. Yeah. So Mark, well, if anyone has, we don't have what you call a huge following here. Just a few people here and there, but if anyone has watched, they've seen you active in the chat over some time. And just to let people know, I guess I first met Mark. We were doing some reactions and some follow up on when Willie Jennings had come for the Sprunts at Union Seminary, and we were kind of looking into that, and that's how I met Mark. And we have tried to keep up with each other here and there after that. But Mark, can you just say a little bit about yourself and maybe your your background interest in these kind of things?
Okay.
Kind of
well, background. I'm a graduate of STVU. Graduated in 1989. I had been doing advanced work in graduate work in New Testament. That didn't quite work out yet.
Right.
I've still got time. I guess it still can happen. Yeah. So my interest in terms of my interest now probably is issues of justice.
Yeah.
That's one of my primary concerns about how do we promote justice in our society, whether that be economic justice, environmental justice, social justice, justice in all aspects.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. Well, and and I think in particular this text this week, this offers an interesting kind of an interesting place to look at that, because you have, if you read this in that political sense, you have this kind of invasion of God's kingdom into this, enemy territory, so to speak. The forces who are occupying get driven out. This man gets liberated, but then the people, they don't they don't really know how to deal with this situation. And I think it reminds me of, for those of us who have kind of become accommodated to the way things are, if we're comfortable with, how things are going, when something comes in and shakes that up, even if it is something that's, ultimately the right thing, a good thing is happening, a little bit of justice is creeping in. Sometimes our first reaction is to say, let's pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes on this a little bit.
I was wondering the town where this takes place, is this mostly a Jewish town? Is this mostly a town of non-Jews?
So a lot of the commentators think that for sure the man is a Gentile. Most people believe that the man is a Gentile, and then of course the questionable nature of being a place that has this many pigs, running around, certainly would make it difficult to believe that that there was a strong that if there was a lot of Jewish presence, that they had leadership authority, because they would have removed that situation long before. So I think a mixture probably, but I think in Mark's text too, when it talks about going to the other side, because there's these lake trips, and it talks about going to the other side. The other side is normally the Gentile, rich territory that Jesus goes to, and then they go to the other side, then they come back, and there's this kind of that element of crossing over, and you see it. Sorry, I'll try not to ramble on too much, but it's really key. There's a really key moment that comes up too, because you have Jesus comes back from the other side after this, and you have the feeding of the 5,000 in the Jewish territory, and then you have the Jesus goes over to the other side again, and you have that the scene where the Syrophoenician woman comes, who's a non-Jewish woman comes, you know, and he gives her the whole line about how, look, the stuff that I'm doing is not for you, you know, like, you know, that I'm not going to give my good stuff to the dogs, you know, and then she kind of schools him, you know, on the fact that grace should be available to everyone. And then after that scene is the feeding of the 4,000, which happens in Gentile territory. So there's kind of like this, you know, in and out movement all throughout this thing. And after, and that woman actually really plays like a key role in kind of, you know, really suggesting to Jesus, even, it seems, that, you know, this mission has a possibility out in this other place, because, you know, the Gentile man here asked to join Jesus' group, and he says, you know, no, you can't, you know, you go back to your own people, you know, and share this message. So I think we're pretty safe in thinking that this is a Gentile, you know, that's a long-winded way to say.
But one of the, I heard somebody in a sermon talk about maybe one of the reasons why Jesus wasn't so welcome was he disrupted the economic flow by with the pigs. So the divine breaks in and disrupts an economic order. And what's interesting about this text is these folks were more concerned about the breakup of their economic order than they were concerned about this man coming back and be a part of their community again.
Right. Yeah. And I think you have to, and you know, it's interesting because you have to ask, you know, where the different people fell in that place, you know, because the people watch the pigs who go and report, I mean, obviously they're not reaping, you know, great economic benefit from this. I mean, they're getting, you know, they're having a sustenance type living. So, you know, but so, yeah, so you can start to break down the classes and how that all works, you know, and who's really, you don't get a full enough picture to know who all's the most upset, you know, in driving it out. But yeah, I think it's true, you know, and I don't know, this may be a little bit off base, but, you know, to me, it really reminded me of this past summer, you know, when some of the rebellions, there was destruction of property. You know, there was things that disrupted, you know, kind of the ways that that people want to just feel safe and feel like they can go to their Target or whatever, you know what I mean, without it being burned down. All right, you know, we'll get to Leonard here in a second. We might, but yeah. So I mean, I think that there's that I saw that kind of picture in there too of how this you know, Jesus does this act that destroys this property, you know, and disrupts the economy, and then how do people react to that? What's the thing? Let's see.
I think he's getting to that too. The idea of the change, especially change in economic order. And what I thought about was with this issue of the pandemic, you had the issue of economics versus people. You know, I understand saying we want to get the economy going. But on the other hand, people were afraid that, well, if I go back to work, am I going to get exposed to this virus? I don't have any health care, and that the whole people versus profit. So I think those issues come out to play in this situation here too.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know, Mark returns to focus on the guy, but the townspeople don't. You know, their only reaction to this, you know, this incredible, you know, liberation from all that he's been going through is to be like, oh, well, let's get this straight about these pigs and about how we're going to go on. You know, So I think there's something to that too. The fear of. And I think Leonard, you know, Leonard's getting at that too. Like when this change happens, they're frightened, you know, by it. And it's not to say that that they actually were totally benefiting from the way things were. You know, I mean, there's, you know, this man in the graveyard is, you know, I think maybe you could say is indicative of what's going on. I mean, if the situation's so bad that you have this person going through what he's going through, you know that things are not right, you know, in the land, so to speak. And I think, how do we? And I do want to add that, you know, there is a place to think about sympathy for the folks who are fearful, because Ched Myers in his book Binding the Strong Man talks about how, you know, if this demons that are sent into the pigs represent the Roman, you know, the Roman legions, like when they got sent out of a place, they just came back 3 or 4 strong and burned the place down again, you know. So there is the reality of repercussions, you know. And so, you know, there is a legitimate place for fear, you know, in that. But it's the question of, you know, is your faith in this thing that God is doing strong enough to get you through, you know, the reactions and the stuff that's going to come at you? Are you going to be able to move, you know, beyond that? And I think, you know, someone talks about how, you know, this brings in Mark's, you know, theology of the cross, you know, that you don't, you know, to make these stands, to be a witness to this thing that God is doing, to challenge the things that God is calling you to challenge, there will be repercussions. You know, there will be, and so I think that's all there. I mean, I think if you're looking for that, you know, that justice angle to it, it's definitely in there for sure.
And there was another issue about when the man asked Jesus to go with him. I think one of the things this whole points out too is that healing is not complete. We always look at the healing as the man gets the demons taken out of him, or he gets his sanity back. But healing is not complete without complete restoration back to community.
Right.
Healing is not just me, you know, getting more of an ailment, you know, out of my body, but being restored back and being part of community again. Right. So for Jesus, that was also part of his healing, that you go back and you be part of community again.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's and of course, you know, part of that in the broader context we're talking about is, you know, is that if you're going to make it, if you're going to survive, you know, the challenges that are going to be ahead in living in this way, you're going to need everybody. Right. You know, you're going to need, you know, you're going to need a community. You're going to need people to be able to come together and be there for each other and be united together. Yeah.
And the implications that for doing ministry is that as we do ministry and we work with folks that have issues, whether it be substance abuse or whatever it is, that until they're completely brought back into community, then the ministry is not over with. So if you somebody who has substance abuse problem, you get them off the substance, that's fine. But until they're restored back into community, so they're a mother again, or they're a husband again, or whatever the case may be, then the work of the ministry is not complete.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think, you know, the references are all here, you know, with the way that the man was treated, being you know, chained and bound, you know, in all of this. I mean, to talk about, you know, you know, the prison industrial complex, to talk about, you know, mass incarceration. I mean, you know, that same kind of idea is that even if someone can get out from inside, there's still the integration back into the community. There's still the how do we ensure that doesn't happen again? How do we make communities that don't rely on that process, you know, to make, you know, to make things work? Yeah. You know, I think that's, no, I think for, yeah. And I think that, you know, our churches for too long have been so focused on, you know, telling people what not to do. You know, well, if you just, and then if for some reason they get caught up in something, whether it's, you know, whether justly or unjustly, they get caught up in something. We say, well, you know, you made a mistake. So we're like, you know, if you would have stuck to the thing, God would have been on your side. But now that, you know, now that you crossed the line, we can't really deal with you anymore. Like, instead of actually being a place that is proactive in building community, you know, proactive in getting people, you know, connected together.
Right. And I also like the piece about when Jesus was dealing with the man, he asked the question, "What is your name?" And I think for me, a part of that is helping folks to face the reality of their trauma. You know, that when he asked that question, it's not just, you know, the fact that, you know, you're calling it who I am, but it also recalls and the reality of what he's been through. You know, and so there's a part of healing is also facing the reality of trauma, and which is difficult.
Yeah. And I think this end of the story, you know, lets us know that you know, like, we don't go through trauma individually. You know what I mean? Like we go, obviously, like, we experience trauma in our, you know, our own selves and individually, but like the trauma that we experience and how we move through it is a collective thing. You know, it's something that's happening. You know, our trauma impacts other people, you know, by how we deal with it and how we come through it. But the world around us is what traumatizes us too. So it's all interconnected, you know, and how people deal with the man while he's, you know, just deep in the midst of his trauma, and how they deal with him after he gets liberated from it, you know, both speak to kind of a failure on the part of the people, you know, to really, you know, to really see and experience and help him through what he's going through, you know.
And what they because they couldn't deal with him, they put him in the tombs. But as we try to do ministry to folks who are in trauma, we have to go to where they are, which might be very, very uncomfortable. I mean, the text doesn't say that Jesus was uncomfortable going to the tombs, but him being human, he had to have some reservation, some concern. So, so as we seek to do ministry to folks who are experiencing that type of hurt, we have to go to where they are, and that might be that might be difficult.
Yeah. Well, and when we got, you know, when you were asking me some questions when we were talking about the crossing of the sea, you know, when he mentions going to the other side, and the storm that blows up, you know, and Jesus calming that storm, you know, some of the commentators talk about how that storm that comes up is a manifestation or a symbol of the disciples' anxiety and fear about going, you know, into this other territory, going into this outside of their own place. How stepping out of that comfort zone, you know, it creates this, you know, this storm comes up that fills them with fear as well. You know, you know, what's going to happen? How do we, you know, I kind of know what I'm getting into on my own side, but going to the other side, you know, and I think we see that all the time. The personal things that we feel when we have to know that we have to go do something uncomfortable, or just the way that you know, our community of faith, if we're in a church, would react whenever they know that they got to push outside. You know, you know, it's easier just to say, no, let's get away. Let's push that stuff to the outside, and we'll focus on our own stuff inside. You know,
about COVID-19. I mean, how the church has to make adjustments, because clearly the church is not going to be the same as it was pre-COVID, and there's going to be some level of uncomfortability for a lot of us in the church, because we're going to have to make some adjustments that we may not be comfortable with. And
I think well, and you know, the the church as a whole is just in a place where they just need to make there's a lot of adjustments that I think just like with healthcare, just like with education, just like with so much else, this pandemic has just kind of brought to the surface a lot of issues that were already present. And I think the church was already in the midst of a lot of them, already, and needing to figure out how to do something differently and move differently. I know that the other thing I wanted to look at, and I know that I didn't whittle it down into a good format, but maybe I can we'll take I'll take a stab at this and see what you think about it. If I can figure out what I did with it. Oh, there we go. Let's see here. Sorry. Here, let's see here.
And the minute that recognition happens, that becomes the basis.
You can't see that. Let's see.
Yeah, you have to blow that up.
Yeah.
Has changed so that I'm so extreme that we're not even allowing ourselves to get a position we can see that commonality. I've heard Pastor talk about when we were.
Yeah, that's a little bit better.
Go down to
Yeah.
very conservative district.
So what I was, I'll tell you what. Let me. I'm gonna take us off the screen for a second. How about that? Yeah. So this is these are some quotes from Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Right. Okay. I remember a long time ago. Yeah.
And so he spends a lot of time in the first chapter and some of the parts of it talking about this fear of freedom. About how in the kind of what his terms in a revolutionary situation, that when the time comes that people realize what's happening and what the true situation is, that they kind of get into this situation of a fear of freedom. And I just thought there's some interesting ways he talks about this. So in the introduction, he talks about, I've encountered both in training courses which analyze the role of conscientization and in actual experimentation with a truly liberatory education, the fear of freedom, discussed in the first chapter of this book. Not infrequently, training course participants call attention to the danger of conscientization in a way that reveals their own fear of freedom. Critical conscience, they say, is anarchic, right? Leads to some kind of chaos. Others add that critical conscience may lead to disorder. Some, however, confess, why deny it? I was afraid of freedom. I'm no longer afraid. And I pulled out too many quotes here, but I was it talks about here. Moreover, their struggle. I'm right. Yeah, their struggle for freedom threatens not only the oppressor but also their own oppressed comrades who are fearful of still greater repression. That's what I think it was talking about. From that context, when they discover within themselves the yearning to be free, they perceive that this yearning can be transformed into reality only when that same yearning is aroused in their comrades. But while dominated by the fear of freedom, they refuse to appeal to others. I think it's interesting that Freire, in dealing in this real world context, of talking to people, trying to get, like you were saying, like actually going to the places where the oppressed are, and trying to help them see the lay of the land and what's really going on, and and where their situation is and how they might actually get liberated from it. That this is a clear issue that he sees come up, over and over again, and it's really clear in this text.
Yeah. And I think he's bringing up the point that I think I was trying to say earlier about that the oppressed. I mean, I guess the reason why there's that fear is that they haven't faced their own pain or their own trauma. Yeah. So until you do that, then there's going to be this uneasiness or
Right.
or as he says, fear.
Yeah.
I guess it's sort of like Plato's allegory of the cave. You've been in the cave for so long,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
you're used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a way, and especially when you realize that, you know, part of that trauma, where that's coming from, is this broader system that's over you, you know,
Right.
that's creating all of this poverty and injustice, you know, and that it would be one thing if you thought, look, hey, I've got this trauma and I need to, you know, go and meditate for 15 minutes, you know, a day or whatever, and I can get out of it. But like,
Right.
when you see that, you know, it's not your own, you know, of course you have personal responsibility all the time to, you know, for things that you do. But when you see that it's this broader context, that there is, there's a group of people that's actually traumatizing you. You know, and that they don't, you know, and they don't really care. You know, that leads to that even deeper sense of, okay, not only do I have to like turn and face myself, you know, and face what I'm going through and how I've been impacted by things, I have to also like go through that and, you know, face the fact that I'm going to be up against, you know, a legion, right? You know, and I think that, you know, and that's where it comes to what you were saying before, and what his point is that, you know, as soon as you realize that that's the case, that's when you have to, when you realize, look, the only option is to get all of the people that I can be in solidarity with to see the same thing that I'm seeing, and to start fighting the same fight that I'm fighting. Because until we have the mass moving in the right direction, you know, we can heal from our trauma long enough to get re-traumatized by the people that, you know what I mean? We can keep in that cycle for a while, but you know, until we all realize, hey, look, we've got to look at this broader thing, this broader situation.
Also key to why Jesus sent the man home, and that he has to fight his battle in his community.
Right.
That's where he can be most effective, is in his community.
Right.
You know, where he's known, and where we can use his, the only words I can think of, his skills or his blessings or whatever.
Right.
He can use in his community.
So
and sometimes we don't realize that we might want to go to, you know, cross the street or to another city, but we can be most effective where we're at.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
You have to find that community, whatever that community is, you know, and try to work there. Yeah. No, I think. Yeah, I think that's right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's a great Eugene Peterson has a great meditation on Jonah. You know, about you know how you get you get an idea that there's a great thing going on in Tarsus, you know, but really you're being called to this other place, you know.
I guess when Jesus saw the reaction of the crowd, he says, "Okay, well, this is the perfect place for this man to work. They need him.
Right.
They need him.
Right.
They didn't realize they needed him.
Yeah.
You know? But Jesus realized that they need him.
Right.
He witnessed it.
Yeah. Well, and I think I mean, we have to be real about the fact that, you know, here's a man who brings a testimony, right? That brings a witness. That is incontrovertible in some ways. You know, like you see the grace of God at work.
Yes.
Immediately. You know, with this, if anybody knows this guy's story, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna see that, you know, they're gonna know that something was up. You know, that they know the possibility of change. You know, the possibility of transformation. They see it right in front of them with this guy. Because you know, and
the transformation takes time too. This is not going to happen. And I think sometimes in ministry we're looking for, you know, snap stuff, but it takes time for people to change. And we have to allow that time. So.
Right, and we don't see the you know, his we don't get a full bio of what happened to him after after he went back and what all he went through, you know. And we know that if he would have followed Jesus, that Mark would have you know, drug him through the mud like he did the rest of the disciples with all the ways that they didn't do very well.
Yeah.
So yeah. I wanted to just I wanted to bring up this last quote from this. He says the naming of the world, which is an act of creation and recreation, is not possible if it's not infused with love. Love is at the same time the foundation of dialogue and dialogue itself. It is thus necessarily the task of responsible subjects and cannot exist in a relation of domination. Domination reveals the pathology of love, sadism in the dominator, masochism in the dominated. Because love is an act of courage, not of fear, love is commitment to others. No matter where the oppressed are found, the act of love is commitment to their cause, the cause of liberation. And I think that's what that you were saying that, that's what part of what you were saying earlier, is we have a responsibility to be going to the places where this message, this testimony, this liberation is needed, to the place, and it's got to move out of an impulse of love, and of solidarity. It's it can't be moved out of a place of, there's a distinction drawn between the way that the Legion shows up and the way that Jesus shows up. So yeah, I think that's important too, and draws, is in line with this, because we know too often, the missionaries have been have shown up with the soldiers, instead of,
or the missionaries
the other way.
That they knew it all, and the folks they were supposed to have been doing ministry with, they didn't know anything. They did disregarded their culture and what have you. So yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think that's No, that's good. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the main stuff I was looking at, going through this. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to.
No, I think this was pretty rich. Yeah, this was rich.
No, it's fun, man. This I think Mark always has a lot to offer. Both of you.
Yeah, this was good. Thanks for letting me in. So what's next week? You go to chapter 6?
I think there's a little bit more of 5.
We had to finish.
And then, a little bit more of 5, and then I don't know how far in. I have to find my. I have it written down somewhere, but I don't know where my little book is. I always get. I'll look in my. I got so many different journals and things laying around, little notes here and there and stuff, And my bookmark fell out of my book too.
I feel you on that.
Oh yeah, no, we got the last part of 5 is Jesus being called to heal the Jairus's daughter, and then the woman with the issue of blood in the middle there. And that's the end of 5, and then and then we'll get into 6. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, cool. And if I don't know if Leonard dropped off again, but we might have to see if we can get a Trinity going sometime. See if we can get Leonard in here.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to call him out. I haven't seen him comment again, but we'll get it. We'll get after it.
Okay.
All right. Hey, thanks for hanging out, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I'll see you next week. Have a good week.
Yeah. All right.